Hello and welcome. I'm Michael Gukas, Chief Economist and Director of Analytics for Gardner Intelligence. I want to spend a little bit of time in this video talking about what a diffusion index is. We reference it all the time. That's what the Gardner Business Index, the GBI, is. So I want to talk about because sometimes it's not always intuitive as to what the numbers mean or how to interpret them. And right now we're seeing numbers that are reaching sort of all-time highs. There's a lot of volatility in the index because of COVID and what has happened there. So I thought we should take some time and just talk about how to understand these diffusion indices and what these numbers mean and how you can make sense of them in your everyday work. What you have here on the screen is, on the right side, the Gardner Business Index survey. This is what is sent out to manufacturers all across the United States each month. And we ask you 10 questions or so. And each of those questions has a 3-part response to it. Each one, for the most part, says more, the same, or less. And we use those responses in a weighted average. So for example, if you look at the top question there, the top question with a 3-part response to it says, how do your new orders compare to 1 month ago? More, the same, or less? If your shop were, for example, to receive this survey this month and say that in your experience, what you observed was that this month's new orders activity was higher than last month's, then you would say more. If this month and last month had the same level amount of new orders, you would say the same. And of course, if this month saw fewer new orders than last month, then you would say less, sorry. And most of the questions work that way. There is one towards the bottom where you'll see it says, how do your supplier deliveries compare to 1 month ago? And it's slower, the same, or faster. And the reason why this question is asked a little different from all of the other questions here is because in a upcycle, when manufacturers are all working very hard, a lot of those frontline manufacturers are going to be making demands on their suppliers for more materials, more product, etc. And so what happens there is that those upstream suppliers receiving all of those orders will not be able to respond right away to those orders and be able to fulfill them right away. They're going to see their own backlogs increase just like anyone else would see their backlogs increase when they receive a swell of new orders. And so what happens then, of course, is that you put in that order, but because of the growing backlog upstream, your order to fulfillment time lengthens. And that lengthening is captured in this question that way. That lengthening order to fulfillment time would mean that your supplier deliveries are going to start to slow down. And so you might answer this question as, well, yeah, my order to fulfillment time is lengthening. I'm needing more time, or the supplier is needing more time to get me what I need. The same thing works in reverse. If the supply chain does not have a lot of pressure on it, then those upstream suppliers can get you your orders fulfilled more quickly. And so when that happens, of course, you would say that your order to fulfillment time is shrinking. And so you're getting those orders relatively faster. Okay, so let's get past the questionnaire and let's look at some data. On the left side of the screen, we have our supplier delivery reading from December of 2011 here through present, which in this case is the March 2021 data. And what we see is 2 particular peaks that I want to look at. There was one peak in mid-2018 where the supplier deliveries reading hit 63, just a little over 63 in fact. And then the latest reading we have saw the latest supplier deliveries reading touch just over 77. And the question that I want to answer is, well, what do these things mean? How do I compare these two? And I have it here in my sample here. If every respondent to the Gardner Business Index were to say the conditions are the same between this month and the month prior, you will end up with a reading of 50. And that's why on many of our charts, you will see I have bolded a line at 50. So this is the point at which our responses either point to a expanding industry or a contracting industry. All right. So if we have, say in this case here, a growing number of respondents saying that, say new orders, for example, are are rising, that there are more new orders this month than the prior month, then these respondents would say that new orders are up. And as you get more and more respondents telling you that new orders are expanding, they're growing, then you can see here up top, when we calculate this, I now no longer have 100 respondents saying the same. I have 92 only saying the same. I have 8 saying up. And what that does is this changes the weighting, the result of the weighted average. The weighted average goes like this. You take the number of respondents saying more or up, and they get a weighting value of 1. Respondents saying same receive a weighting of 0.5, and respondents saying down receive a weighting of 0. And so that's how this works. That's the basic math behind it, which means that if I have right here 8 respondents saying up, now let's say I have 8 respondents saying down. So now I have 8 respondents saying down, 8 respondents saying up, and the remainder saying the same. And we get right back to an index rating of 50. Again, because this is a diffusion index, it's looking at proportions. What proportion of the respondents are saying up, what proportion are saying down or slower, and then what proportion are staying the same. And you're basically comparing those varying proportions. So that's how the index works, generally speaking. Like we said, for supplier deliveries, it's a little bit different. The responses are faster, same, slower. I have this color-coded consistently here. So if we have a growing proportion of shops saying faster, that will lower the index rating. If on the other hand, they say slower, it just works the opposite way. So you can see here how all that works. All right. So getting to our final example, how do we compare 2 different highs? So if we remember, the 2018 high for supplier deliveries was 63, a little over 63. So how many of these, if everyone starts off saying the same, how many of these have to say slower in order for us to get to 63 and a half for the sake of this example, right? So there we're at 65. So let's back this off a little. There we go. So you have 27 respondents saying slower here in order to get to that reading of 63.5. Again, that goes back to right here, this prior high. How many more respondents would therefore have to say slower in order for us to get to 77 and a half? Well, let's do a little comparison here. That gives us our 27 respondents out of our sample of 100 who had to say slower or slowing supplier delivery times. And so we get to 63.5. Now, if we do the same thing over here and we assume that this is the latest reading here from 2021, I take those same 27 and I'm at 63.5, and I have to keep adding responses until we get to 77 and a half. All right, so if we keep doing that, that's 77. Just keep adding them here, right? There we go. So you have 55 respondents now having to tell you that supply chains are slowing in order to get to a reading of 77.5. And this is, again, this is the challenge, and why I'm doing this is because you see one reading index that is 77.5 and you see another one that is 63.5, and you're saying to yourself, okay, so there's, you know, roughly a 14-point difference here between the two. So what, right? Well, this is the so what. The so what is that here, in order to get this difference in results, you have to more than double the number of respondents saying the supply chains are slower. And that's why this is a big deal. It's because right now in the data, what we're seeing is that more than twice as many job shops and composites fabricators and plastics processors is telling us that supply chains are running more slowly, and it's a vastly greater number here in 2021 than it was during the last high of mid-2018. So that's what I wanted to show you. That's the difference between a number like this here at around 63, 64, and a number that's way up here at 77. With Gardner Intelligence, I'm Michael Gukas, Chief Economist and Director of Analytics. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the Gardner Business Index and what the numbers mean and how you can use these numbers to guide your own business decisions. If you are a participant in the GBI, please know that you have my personal thanks. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible for me to do this kind of work. If you want to learn more, you can contact me directly, or you can visit our website, gardnerintelligence.com. There is a contact us link there, and you can reach out to the entire team that way as well. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.